Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dharma Helper and this is DH Reviews. This is my Season 1, Episode 4 review of Constantine. If you missed any of my other Constantine reviews and you want to take a look at those, there will be a link in the description of the video as well as an annotation behind me on the screen. Also, all of my reviews from last week, my Gotham review, my Scorpion review, and my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. review, I'll link those in the description of the video as well for you to check those out if you're interested in my thoughts on those series. That being said, Constantine Season 1 Episode 4 was called A Feast for Friends. And in this episode, Gary Lester, an old friend of Constantine and a member of that Newcastle group, returns, and he brings with him a hunger demon which he unintentionally releases. And the episode deals with Gary and Constantine reconnecting and reconciling their problems and the differences and the baggage that Newcastle left, as well as trying to come together and battle this hunger demon and stop the hunger demon from wreaking havoc. And so that's basically the story of the episode. Let's talk about the characters, and let's begin with Constantine. The best way to describe Constantine in this episode is to go back to that comparison of Constantine and Doctor Who. If you know anything about Doctor Who, again, Doctor Who inspires a lot of loyalty in his companions, almost blind loyalty. And Constantine, we learn Constantine does the same sort of thing. Doctor Who has companions that would do anything for him, and he uses that to his advantage at sometimes. And he maybe manipulates them or props them up in such a way as to get them to do things that they wouldn't necessarily normally do. And Constantine is much in the same way. We learned from Gary that Constantine had a group of friends, a group of people, I should say, that went with him to Newcastle and that idolized him, that looked up to him, and that tried to impress him and get involved in all this stuff in the occult. And that, to me, is again drawing a parallel between Doctor Who and Constantine, is very interesting because Gary in this episode talks about how he really looked up to Constantine and how he really tried to impress Constantine and all this stuff. And Constantine, again, much like Doctor Who, takes advantage of that in this episode and ultimately maybe manipulates Gary into doing what he did at the end of the episode. And so, to me, Constantine takes the idea of that from Doctor Who and takes it one step further. The thing about Doctor Who is he always finds a way to keep his companions safe, and he tries to the best of his ability, reduce the casualties in situations. But Constantine takes that idea and does that one step further and says, there's not always going to be that out. There's not always going to be the way to save everybody. And sometimes hard choices have to be made and sacrifices have to be made. And Constantine carries the weight of that with him. And, he inspires this loyalty in people and this fascination with people. And ultimately, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't end well. And that was the compelling thing to see from Constantine in this episode, is the way that he deals with the fact that these people look up to him and these people respect him and they try to impress him, and at the end of the day it ends up killing them. And just wrapping up my thoughts on Constantine, again going back to Doctor Who offers his companions all of space and time. That's a big thing about him. All of space and time, wherever you want to go, who can turn that down? And Constantine offers his companions a whole new world to look at. The occult, spirits, demons, magic. It's almost overwhelming in nature, and it's also something that's very difficult to turn down. And so that kind of goes back to that idea of the Newcastle group, of Liv, and of Zed. All of these people being offered and introduced to all of this different new stuff and their reactions to it. Liv ultimately left, Zed stayed, and the Newcastle group, from what we understand, the Newcastle group is the end result of that behavior. We saw Archie's pretty messed up, We saw Gary's pretty messed up, and whoever else might be involved in that group is probably also got a lot of problems. And so Zed and Liv are kind of the beginning of that, and then the Newcastle group is the end result. So that's kind of my thoughts on Constantine. Again, I enjoyed seeing the darker side of things, the darker side of that relationship between Companion and Doctor, or Companion and Constantine. I enjoyed seeing the real repercussions of that and the weight that it had on Constantine. Because, Constantine's companions, his friends, have to make these sacrifices, but at the end of the day, Constantine is the one who has to carry that body count with him. And so I enjoyed seeing that reaction and the sharpness of that story. So let's talk about Gary. Gary, as I said, was one of the people who followed Constantine to Newcastle to rescue Astrid from that demon. And Gary was a drug addict, party animal kind of guy. And when the demon came for Astrid, he ran. He panicked. He was high at the time, and then he panicked and he hid, and he lives with that regret for years and years, turning to heroin and all these different hard drugs. And eventually he finds this man who has the hunger demon in him, so he lets that man, he frees that man from the hunger demon and bottles the hunger demon up, and that's where we are today, is that the hunger demon is free again. And so Gary's arc in this episode is interesting. He comes into the episode looking to stop the hunger demon, and he comes back with Constantine, and he talks about how he idolized Constantine, how he was so loyal to Constantine, and all this stuff. And his arc in this episode is trying to redeem himself for the mistakes of Newcastle, and he does that ultimately by sacrificing himself in order to trap the hunger demon. And again, that goes back to that blind loyalty that Constantine inspires in people, and how a lot of what Gary does is as a result of that loyalty and the admiration that he has for Constantine. So for me, again, very sharp, very good arc for Gary in terms of getting across that idea of maybe if Zed stays on with Constantine, this is the end result. Or if Liv had stayed on with Constantine, that's the end result, is eventually he will inspire enough loyalty and trust and all this. Constantine will inspire all that enough in you where you will lay down your life or sacrifice yourself without so much as a second thought, and you'll think it's your idea. And so that was kind of cool to play around with and cool to see from Gary's perspective. And I'm glad that we got more information about Newcastle and how apparently there was a group of people. We saw Archie. We've seen Chaz. I assume Chaz was there. We've seen Gary. I'm wondering if there are more people from Newcastle out there that we haven't quite seen yet, and what exactly they will have to say about it. We've heard Constantine's perspective on Newcastle. We heard Gary's perspective on Newcastle. Now I want to see if there are more people out there who were there and who can give a little bit more light on the subject. So that kind of wraps up my thoughts on Gary. Cool character. If I had to say anything, I would say that it's a shame that he only lasted one episode. I would have expected maybe 2 or 3 or 4 episodes out of Gary. But to see that he had all this stuff going on, I think he served his purpose in terms of the story, in terms of showing us that when you join up with Constantine, this is what happens 9 times out of 10. I think he served his point in the story, so I can't really fault them for giving him only 1 episode, but it would have been a cool character to maybe see more of a redemption arc, more of where he maybe cleans himself up and becomes a master of the occult to maybe rival Constantine's skill, because we saw that he was able to trap the hunger demon by himself. So that was just maybe a little too quick, but again, solid arc, Solid character, solid episode, so I can't really fault it for that. Let's talk about Zed. And Zed in this episode is kind of the voice of reason, much like she was in the previous episodes. She tells Constantine, there must have been another way to do that, to trap the hunger demon. There has to have been another way to get this mission done. It's very much going back to the Doctor Who comparison. She is holding on to that idea of Doctor Who, of there's always a different way to do things. There's something up our sleeve at any given time that we can do to solve this problem and to keep everybody whole. And that's not going to work in Constantine. That's not going to work in this universe. In this universe, hard decisions have to be made. And what effect that has on Zed is going to be interesting to see, because she doesn't idolize Constantine the way that Archie might have, or the way that we saw that Gary did. She doesn't see him in that light. She sees him as this guy who she drew and who makes really dumb decisions. She doesn't see him as the holier-than-thou master of the occult that everybody else does. She just sees him as that's John Constantine. So to see the reaction to that, and to see the way that their relationship develops in comparison to the way that the Gary relationship developed and that Archie developed and that the Newcastle group developed, is going to be pretty cool to watch. And to see, again, the point where she says she's had enough, or maybe she stands up to Constantine or something like that. Continuing to talk about Zed here, in this episode, again, we see more of her powers developing, and she sees coins falling as Manny approaches. And that's sort of, we learn that clairvoyants all have different ways to note when angels or spirits are about. And that was kind of cool to see, and maybe reaching a little bit here, but what would be interesting would be a face-to-face between Manny and Zed. As Zed's powers grow, maybe she's able not only to notice when Manny is near, but to communicate with him in much the same way that Constantine does. I think a conversation between those two would be interesting. And talking very briefly about Manny, we saw more from Manny in this episode, and I don't know if I said it in my previous reviews, or if I might have said it, or if the show might have said it out loud, but Manny, to me, Manny is the angel of death, right? He's been around when people have died, and he sort of carries them over. He carried that one guy, that old man from the last episode, The Devil's Vinyl. He kissed him on the forehead, and the flatline happened. So Manny is the angel of death, right? And so to me, the questions that we have to ask are, number one, what could the angel of death possibly be planning? Number two, what are the rules behind what he can and can't do? Number three, what sort of powers is he able to use? What powers does he have? We know apparently he can stop time and communicate with whomever he wishes, but what other sort of powers can he have? And when are we going to see that? So those are the questions that I have about Manny. Not so much a discussion on Manny as just laying the groundwork for later discussion. If you have anything you want to add about that, leave that in the comments. My overall thoughts on the episode. Solid episode. Very much probably my favorite episode to date. If you've read the comics, the John Constantine comics, I haven't, but apparently this episode and a lot of the series is based on a run of Constantine called Hellblazer, and it's very much dark and a lot like the episode that we saw this week. It's dark, gritty, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard choices have to be made. And so I like that. I like that we're seeing very heavy decisions being made early on. And as those pile up, that's going to have a lot of strain on our characters, on Chaz, on Constantine, on Zed. in different ways, and that's going to be cool to explore. Solid arc, as I said, in terms of Gary and exploring the Newcastle stuff. Very strong episode. Visually, again, the visual effects are pretty cool. The coins, the hallucinations, all this sort of stuff that sets Constantine apart and that is able to make Constantine its own show. Really cool just to look at. Kind of nasty, the whole eye thing and the voodoo priest or the shaman. Kind of nasty, kind of dirty, kind of really just cool. You know, some things are just cool to look at, and that's just cool to look at. So really great episode. I enjoyed it. Probably the best episode to date, like I said. So if you like this review, leave a like. If you want to have anything to talk about, anything I might have said or might have missed that you want to talk about, talk to me in the comments down below or on Twitter at the DH Reviews. If you want to see more reviews like this, go ahead and subscribe, and you'll see my reviews as they come out. Mondays are Constantine, Tuesdays are Gotham, Wednesdays are Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Thursdays are Scorpion. Again, if you want to see those, subscribe to the channel and share this video so that we can get more subscribers, more people watching these videos, and I can continue to do the things that I enjoy, like those live streams. And speaking of the live streams, the week of December 9th is the next live stream, and that'll be for the winter finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As that gets closer, I'll nail down an actual date. Again, I'm thinking probably that Saturday, again at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I will let you guys know what I've decided to do. I've got some pretty interesting stuff planned for that live stream. Just little nods and some kind of treats for those of you that show up. But nothing too serious, just some cool stuff that I've been working around with and playing around with. So if you want to watch that, look out for that in the future. And then again, the week of January 6th is going to be the live stream for the Agent Carter premiere. And I'll have more information for that as that happens. So that'll do it for this review, guys. I'm interested to know what you thought about the episode, so talk to me in the comment section or on Twitter at the DH Reviews. But with that being said, I've been Dharma Helper, this has been DH Reviews, and I will see you in the next video.